amazing sequel to Cinder. Cinder was probably the best YA book I read last year. It was fun, it was entertaining, it had really compelling characters, and a really good retelling of Cinderella. It was predictable, but you know what? That was okay, because the story is just kind of like the bones of what the story is actually about, you know. The plot is going to be similar to Cinderella, but it does its own twists and turns to make it work. Scarlet, the sequel, is a reimagining of Little Red Riding Hood, and it is quite similar to Cinder in a lot of ways. And I would say that if you liked Cinder, you will most likely like Scarlet. If you did not like Cinder, you probably won't like Scarlet, because they are very similar in how they're structured. So I'll kind of put it into what I really liked about it and what I didn't really like about it. What I really liked about Scarlet was that I love the lead. The lead girl's name is Scarlet. Duh. I felt like she was a really strong, engaging heroine. I'm strong such cliche words. She was a well-written heroine. We knew exactly what she stood for. We knew what she meant, and I love that she was an active participant in searching for her grandmother. Wait, I should probably tell what the plot of the story is. Okay, so Cinder, the cyborg mechanic, returns in the brilliant, thrilling installment of the best-selling Lunar Chronicles. She's trying to break out of prison, even though if she succeeds, she'll be the Commonwealth's most wanted fugitive. Halfway around the world, Scarlet Benoit's grandmother is missing. When Scarlet encounters Wolf, a street fighter who may have information about her grandmother's whereabouts, she is loath to trust this stranger, but is inexplicably drawn to him, and he to her. As Scarlet and Wolf unravel one mystery, they encounter another when they meet Cinder. Now all of them must stay one step ahead of the vicious Lunar Queen Levana, who will do anything for the handsome Prince K to become her husband, her king, her prisoner. So here's the thing about Scarlet. On the one hand, you get a really fun character like Scarlet Benoit, who's our Little Red Riding Hood character, as she searches for her missing grandmother. Scarlet was, you know, a fun heroine, and fun to like have her as a POV character. The emotions she felt were very genuine, always were as strong as the writer intended, and sensible. She was never too stupid to live. She always tried to make the best decisions. You know, she was brave but not dumb. You know, she was capable but not overly done so. She was a human character. She had her flaws because sometimes she was a little bit too hot-headed and a little bit too self-concerning. But overall, I thought that she was really strong. I also think that she's a good fold to Cinder, because Cinder doesn't really have the best viewpoint of herself due to her being a cyborg and whatnot. So Scarlet's a more self-secure character in who she is. Much like Cinder's story, Scarlet's story, like I said, the bare bones of it is predictable. But like I said with Cinder, I don't think this is a bad thing. I don't think in a story like this, the plot isn't as necessary, because it is a retelling. What's important is how the retelling is done, how the characters are, how they interact with each other, how the story uses what we know is going to happen as a way to build stuff up, rather than just using it as a crutch. And I feel like it's not used as a crutch. It's always used to make familiar channels of what you know is going to happen, but improve it constantly. And, you know, we were introduced to a bunch of new characters in this book, one of them being Wolf, another one being a captain. And I felt like all these characters, you got a really good idea of who they were through dialogue, through interactions between other characters, and it was just a really strong way of making everything come together in the end. And I think that also Meyer knows how to keep the story interesting. It's never dull, because she doesn't really give people time to be dull. Something happens every single chapter. And I think with especially a fairy tale retelling, that's very important, because you want to make sure the reader's constantly engaged. That's constantly engaged. I read this in one sitting while I was coming home from central New York. So that was like a 5-hour ride, and I finished this book. It was amazing, and I really enjoyed it. Now, Cinder's story runs parallel to Scarlet, and unfortunately I think it's what drags the book down ultimately from 5 stars to 4. While, you know, we got introduced to new characters, and like I said before, her story does not really go anywhere until the final act of the narrative. It very much is a sequel in every way. It continues the story, it builds us stuff for the next installment, but it is kind of like an in-between story for her, and she's the main character, and if we're not feeling for Cinder right now, what's the point? It's just kind of like her going through the motions of, getting from one spot to another, and it takes a whole novel for her to get there, and so that's kind of frustrating because you want more to be happening for her, and it doesn't really work out. We don't learn anything we didn't already know. Her powers don't improve that much for it to be like, oh, well, she's training. I just kind of like her own story pulled Scarlet's story down, because you couldn't just focus on her. You had to keep going back to Cinder, and Cinder didn't have as much to do as Scarlet did. Now, this didn't ruin the story for me, but it was just something that I could actively notice as I was reading the book. I noticed that, like, okay, nothing is really happening even though we have these pages. And I kind of took a very conscious notice of that, because I didn't want to just get wrapped up in, like, it's so amazing, I love it, because I do love it, without noticing, oh, this is a very obvious flaw in the way it was written. And I think that's really the big thing that will drag it down for most readers who are fans of Cinder. That being said, even with the criticism, this book was awesome. And I think what's awesome about this book and Cinder is that it stays away from so many things in YA that I despise. You get smart protagonists, smart love interests, no love triangle. And I thought I was going to go there for a second. I was terrified. I was like, oh God, Lord Jesus, please don't let this book turn into a love triangle. And it didn't. Thank you, Kanye. You heard my prayers. Beyonce bless. Because I was like, I could not deal with it. I cannot deal with it. No love triangle in my precious. My precious has to stay precious. And it did that. There was no love triangles. There's no abusive boyfriends. Although Wolf is a very interesting, I feel like I don't want to spoil what happens with him, but I think that Wolf kind of teetered it, but you kind of understood what was doing it. It wasn't like, fucking Patch from Hush Hush or Daniel or any of those other guys. It was a lot different from that, and I think that is kind of what makes it understandable for that relationship. Although it's touch and go. If people don't like it, I totally get that, but I don't feel like it really takes away that much. It's a strong story for what it is. Like, if you don't like fairy tale retellings, you don't like the whole premise, if you read it or you didn't really think it was that interesting, don't pick up this. You will not like it, you will not enjoy it, it will not give you anything. But if you liked Cinder, you love Cinder, I really recommend this. It was a fun continuation. I can't wait for the rest of them. And I think that, Marissa Meyer is doing an amazing job with telling these stories. I think that she really gets how to do a really good retelling. And even though it's not dark or whatever, it's fine because it gets to, it's fun and entertaining. And I feel like if you're not going to be dark with your retelling, at least be fun and engaging. And she does that completely, and it's awesome. So, I gave 2 good reviews today. No one can say I'm just negative.